Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I guess I was a little too excited for it. I'm Matt.
I'm Eric.
And our excitement is because you know what? We're in the month of July. We're halfway through the year. And so Eric and I are taking a little time out this week to look at our top five so far for the first half of the year. And you know what? There have been some pretty good movies so far this year. In fact, when I get to my number one, I rewatched that again last night. Still got plenty dusty in my room. Just,
Okay.
holding my tiny cat.
Yeah.
Watching the film, but there have been some good ones. There are some ones we're looking forward to. So at the end, we will each give you one film coming in the rest of the year that we're also excited about. It'll be a fun time to see how many of these top five stay kind of in their same position or in the top 10 by the end of the year. I was mentioning last week, by this time last year, we had already seen the eventual Best Picture winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once. We'd already seen Top Gun Maverick, movies that for me stayed pretty high up in my top 10 all the way throughout the year. So you can't discount the winter months and then the summer blockbuster season.
Yeah.
But Eric, I will let you kick it off, and we're going to go 5-1, and your number five probably going to be pretty familiar to a lot of people. It feels like we just talked about it last week, and that's because we did.
That's if we did, yeah.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So, what makes it your number five?
I've missed a lot this year. I don't hate to be mean to Indiana Jones for it and say like, oh, the reason it's there is just because I haven't seen other better things. But like, if you saw my, only like 2% psychotic rant that I went on about how that movie kind of like clicked for me in a way that it was a little unconventional. I've seen it resonate with other people with similar messages about nostalgia and whatnot. It's just had enough there for me to chew on. And there's another preview. Had enough there for me to chew on, and I think Harrison Ford really brought his all to this sort of statement on his franchise and his history with the character, and it just resonated well enough, had enough goofy, memorable moments, and it's just really hit me so far. Oh, you're muted.
I just look at it as now you don't have to wonder if I found the photo.
Yeah, there you go.
My bad. I really liked Indiana Jones too. As I mentioned last week, it is certainly up in my top 20. I've seen a few movies. I think at the definitive midpoint, I was at like 450 films watched so far. I'm on pace for like 900. I'm wondering if I can crack 1,000 or if it'll be too much. But my number five, I went with Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This one came out in April, based on the Judy Blume book. I really liked Abby Ryder-Fortson, who plays Margaret. It was a very cute tale. And, I think it is a quintessential story for young girls, but I'm decidedly not a young girl. And I was still quite moved, quite entertained. I loved Rachel McAdams and actually Benny Safdie as the parents.
Yeah.
Probably not what you're expecting, at least the Benny Safdie part in a
I was shocked.
Judy Blume novel. Really enjoyed Kathy Bates in there. I was moved by the story and the ideas, so that was my number four. My number five. My number four is actually Air. Which was the story of how Nike ended up signing Michael Jordan. It got a limited theatrical run right at the beginning of April. It is now actually available to stream on Prime Video. It was a Prime Video original film, but they decided to put it out in theaters, I think, for a qualifying run. Ben Affleck directs it here. I think he does a killer job. I really loved the performances all the way around. Matt Damon is kind of the head scout, Sonny Vaccaro, who has the vision that Michael Jordan could change fortune for Nike basketball. It's funny, in 2023, we think of Nike basketball as this kind of behemoth on the landscape, but back in 1984, they were actually considering whether they needed to drop their basketball division because it was so unprofitable and because they were so far behind like Adidas and Reebok. And it was signing Michael Jordan and creating the Air Jordan that really changed the game for them. And it's about his singular vision pursuit. Affleck's in the movie. He plays Phil Knight, who owns Nike. Chris Messina plays Michael Jordan's agent. One of the most profane performances I've seen all year. Also, still currently my pick for best supporting actor.
Okay.
He and Matt Damon back and forth, mostly on phone calls, was incredible. Viola Davis plays Michael Jordan's mother, kind of instrumental. It was really Sonny Vaccaro pitching to Michael Jordan's mother that got the deal done. You wouldn't think a biopic set in the 80s about them trying to sign a shoe contract would be that exciting. I loved it a lot. I thought it was a very emotional ride, so it's number 4 for me. But Eric, number 4 for you is
Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This is another one that just, it's more because of the way that it resonated personally among a group of friends of mine and I who got into this game just before they announced they were making the movie. And to see it come together and represent so well what's appealing about that game, and for Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez to kind of like lead so charismatically through it. There were just a lot of creative choices. I really like that team, John Francis Daly and the other director, who I unfortunately can't remember the name of. Their work on Game Night, I think that's a very underrated comedy, and I think they've just kind of proved that they have a lot of commercial appeal and success.
John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. That's why I couldn't remember. They're both John. They also did Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Yeah, well, there were 2 of like 4 to 6 writers on Homecoming, but I think they were like they're a definite voice for entertainment. And I'm really kind of more upset that this didn't make as much money and wasn't as successful as I would hope it would be. Some people give it flack for being similar to Guardians of the Galaxy and kind of using the beats of that movie to kind of find its own success or like ride it that way. I don't 100% see it that way. I just thought it was a lot of fun.
And that's one that I still have it actually in my top 10 as well. My favorite, since we're rabbit trailing a little bit, of their movies is actually the remake of Vacation, which is not really a remake, but kind of the reboot where you follow a grown Rusty Griswold. There are some things in there. I've seen that movie probably 25 times. And it never ceases to make me laugh.
It's finally back on Netflix, so I get to see that soon.
Oh man, you should check it out. What is ironic is I believe you and I have the same number 3.
Oh yeah, this is like well earned. This movie, like Spider-Man, like this blew me out of the water. Like it's so imaginative. It's so spectacular. It's so like thoughtful about the character and what resonates about the idea of Spider-Man, and it's every creative department deserves some sort of award here. Animation, the score, editing, like there are so many things in this. Like I thought the performances are extremely solid as well. Like the vocal performances are if sometimes you're watching a movie and you feel like you can just like hear an actor. It's like, and I know that actor and I can kind of picture their face in a sound booth, like saying their lines and whatnot. I don't know. I felt really engaged with the characters, and I feel like this just threw me for a loop. And with it being this is becoming a year of part 1s. And I feel like
even if they opted not to call it part 1.
Yeah, it's very satisfying, more satisfying than it has been in a long run to have a sort of chaptered beat like that ending really, really makes us stand head and above like some other movies that try to do the same things. So
yeah, in 2018 when Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse came out, I didn't really know what to expect. I don't hate animated films. That sometimes gets leveled against me, but animated would not be my top genre. I've probably watched more animated superhero films in the last 2 or 3 years, ironically, because of Into the Spider-Verse than I had before. So I was a little like, oh, I'll go see this. It looks like it'll be okay, but I don't really know what to make of this. And I was blown away. It remains, it was one of my favorite films when it came out. It remains one of my favorite superhero movies. I think it's one of the best Spider-Man movies that was made. So I was curious. It took them a little bit of time to kind of get to this follow-up across the Spider-Verse. And then I think it's like through the Spider-Verse or something, because
Beyond, yeah.
beyond the Spider-Verse, yeah.
Which was initially set to come out in March of next year, and then they sort of admitted, yeah, no, we weren't making these movies at the same time. There's no way that's going to happen, and now it's up in the air.
Yeah, it's probably like 2025, which is fine as long as you don't have to wait 5 more years. And I think COVID slowed a whole bunch of things down. It's hard to know what the timing would have been, but I wasn't sure what to expect going back. How do you kind of capture that magic? And they really found a way to do it. They introduced new variants that I thought were interesting. You get a lot more probably personal backstory with Gwen Stacy, which I really enjoyed. Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy, their relationship, but also the relationship of them with their parents, mirrored a little bit by older Peter Parker being a parent. It was a real, parent and child dynamic. I thought it ended in an interesting spot where it's set up. It might have been a touch long. I don't like it quite as much as I liked the first one, but I still like it a lot. Obviously, it's still sitting in my top 5 movies of the year. I was blown away again with what they did, and I think right now that's probably the one to beat when it comes to animated films this year. I liked Elemental. I've liked a couple other ones. I thought Nimona was interesting that just came out on Netflix, but I think it's possible that they go back to back winning the animated Oscar unless we get a big one that really does something towards the end of the year here, because I was really impressed with what they did. My number 2 is the film Past Lives, and this one was part of the Sundance Film Festival. Comes from Celine's Song, and then it got finally released literally the last weekend of June. This was the last movie I saw technically in June to qualify for the first half of the year, and I was waiting to see if it was going to come out because so many people were very excited about it. As soon as I saw it, I knew why. I'm going to say this is not a light watch. It is.
Really? Because like one.
Ricky said it was incredibly depressing. I tried to say it was a little bit of a downer, and he's like, "What do you mean? It's the saddest movie I've ever seen." So it's basically about 2 kids that, when they're 12, kind of have a connection in Korea. And one of them, with her family, emigrates to the West, first to Canada and then to New York. 12 years later, they kind of connect again via Skype, and they're forming a pretty deepening connection. But when it becomes clear that she wants to be a playwright and is going to stay in New York, and he's on a path to become an accountant or an engineer, I think it was an engineer, I'm sorry, I messed that up, in Korea, she kind of cuts off their communication. And literally almost a couple weeks later at a writer's retreat, she meets this other writer, and they end up kind of falling in love. And then you jump ahead 12 more years, and now she's married and a playwright. Her friend is still single and coming to New York to visit her. And all those kind of feelings and 24 years and the what if and the decisions you make in your life and the decisions that are made on your behalf. It's this kind of deep exploration of these 3 characters. It is difficult. It is incredibly moving. It has just beautiful writing, beautiful performances. Greta Lee, who is the main actress here, I have her currently sitting as my top choice for actresses so far for midpoint of the year. But all the performances are really great. Even John Magaro plays her they make a joke like white Jewish husband. He basically says at one point in time, if this was a romantic comedy, I would be the evil American that's standing in the way of true romance, because you have this fantastic story with your friend. And it's like that complexity and the way that they go back and forth. It was a beautiful movie. I hope at some point you get to see it. I'll be curious to see what your thoughts are. And it's not been easy to find. It was in real limited theatrical release. Of course, art movies, deep, purposeful movies that get released in the middle of blockbuster season often don't get that many screens and don't get that much time. I don't even think it's still in our theater here, which is saying something, because it's only 1 week ago. It literally opened on June 30th, the same day as Indiana Jones, and I'm not sure it's still there, but hopefully it'll be coming out. It's worth checking out. Don't watch it when you're already feeling sad or if you're looking for something to pick you up, but I just thought it was beautifully shot. Eric, your number 2 movie, also a touch emotional.
It's Intergalactic Planetary, Intergalactic. I adore the entire Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. And this continued its trend of being just its own living, breathing organism within the MCU that stands on its own like 2 feet and is just, it was its own sort of end game. It's its own sort of conclusion to a 10-year journey with these characters on screen. And it was so thoughtful, and the relationships were dealt with so carefully because of the way that, they had to be worked into Infinity War and all of that kind of thing. But also the imagination on screen, Nathan Fillion's cameo, Cosmo's subplot. The only even criticism I can think of this as a blockbuster movie, as a theater experience, or anything at all, is they kind of turned this character Adam Warlock into sort of a joke, and then they leave that as the introduction of that character for someone else to deal with down the line. And that's such a minimal sort of problem for something that was just so entertaining that, like, how do you feel that much for a CGI raccoon that rips someone's face off? Like, it's unbelievable. It's again, the score, is mwah, and the like needle drop choices and all that kind of stuff. And I can't think of a performance I didn't like. It was just across the board an absolute blast and my absolute favorite experience. There were a lot of reasons for me to not enjoy that theater experience, and this like overswept everything. Like it's so easy to get distracted by people talking, or a kid being in a movie they shouldn't be in, or people doing this and that, and it just took 2 seconds to be snapped out and snapped back into this thing like every second of the ride, and it's unbelievable. I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Well, I'll have a little more on that a little bit later, but Eric, what was your number 1 of the first half?
So by a nose, the only reason this isn't that the Guardians isn't my number 1 is because Creed 3 was just so phenomenal. And I'm sick to hear the struggles that are going on surrounding Jonathan Majors, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. But for Michael B. Jordan to stand at the front of this franchise, take the reins that were laid down, I believe, by Ryan Coogler, and to rock it this hard on his first outing as director is unbelievable. Again, they take something that's sort of subtext for the character in the first movie about him not words, and having to grapple with who he is on the inside and how he faces the world through his fists. And they turn that into text. They turn that into something that they're working out. His relationship with his daughter is amazing. Like, there's such great chemistry between every character they chose, and they so carefully wrote into Donnie's backstory in order to introduce this character. I keep wanting to call him Damien. Is he also Damien? And the guy from Fast X is Damien?
I think it was Damien. Let me look. I've seen so many movies.
I was like, oh
You
man,
almost forget Creed 3 came out so early in the year that you almost forget that
it is Damian Anderson.
it's Damien, yeah.
Oh, it's Dante in Fast X. That's what it is. So, yeah, just this is racks my heart and soul with emotional like punches and beats, and the anime inspiration behind it. I just buy into like everything about it. Even the like one sequence that people are critical of, the CGI sort of echo like the fight that happens behind the fight, and yeah, has some of the best single shots I think of any movie. Like you can like a whole movie and beats, but like cinematography wise, it has some of the best shots I've seen in years. Standalone. So yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one too. I thought it was an improvement for me a little bit over Creed 2, which and that put me on a whole path. It forced me to actually watch all the Rocky movies because I had seen Rocky,
Yeah.
I had seen Rocky Balboa, and I had seen the Creed movies. And let me tell you, I don't think I was missing much.
Yeah, you would watch most of the best.
I'd watch the best ones. My number one, we touched on a little bit earlier, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you know me and you know my superhero loves, this probably isn't going to be that hard to guess. I have a fantasy football team that for 6 years has been named the Trash Pandas. Guardians of the Galaxy, the original one, is still my favorite MCU film and one of my favorite superhero films of all time. I was both excited and nervous to see how this was going to go. You know, James Gunn, we already know, is moving on to the DC universe. A lot of the actors in here, had made peace with their arc and their time ending, and how was it going to end? And I think watching some of those trailers, I was worried we were going to get a lot more Tony Stark endings.
Yeah.
Than what we got, but
Yeah.
the way he did it was beautiful. The emotions were palpable. You talk about the song choices. I'm right there with you. Even including, doing the Florence and the Machine song at the end and getting to see kind of everybody dance. It's very cathartic and emotional. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 released on VOD on Friday. And it took me 2.5 seconds to make that purchase. And as soon as I got home from work last night, I, made everyone dinner, and then I'm like, yeah, we're going to watch this. And, I watched all the special effects, and I watched all the deleted scenes, and I told Ricky I narrowly dodged a bullet because Pete Davidson is in one of those deleted scenes. And I don't know if I could have had my number one movie. Fortunately, you know what? He's not in the theatrical cut, so but I was like,
everywhere this year.
Oh my, it's coming for me.
That's so funny.
But I just loved the way it was put together. I would imagine it's going to stay right near the top for me throughout the year. It was everything I hoped it could be. And I'm really grateful for that. Excited to see what all these guys do next, but I thought it was a great ending for this chapter. I love Peter. I love Rocket. I'm actually thinking about taking my best friend, which is my cat, and dressing it as Rocket, and so I being Peter for Halloween. My wife rolls her eyes. I don't think she realizes I'm sort of serious about that.
Yeah, just keep laughing about it and dial the laughter down as you get closer to Halloween, and you'll be good to go.
So, Eric, why don't you give a quick recap of your top 5?
So, yeah, again, just to kind of run down the list, at number 5, I have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I know it's new. I know there's probably something that will resonate with me stronger, but there's Indiana Jones. And then you have Dungeons and Dragons. You have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Sitting right on top of that is
Guardians
of the Galaxy. I keep forgetting that's not the number one. And then Creed 3 for my number 1 for the year.
And Dial of Destiny is obviously only in theaters, as is Across the Spider-Verse. Dungeons and Dragons, if you want to check that out, is now streaming on Paramount Plus. If you have a subscription to that, in addition to VOD, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I just mentioned, dropped on Vudu on Friday. I would imagine about a month or so it'll be on Disney Plus. And you know what? It's weird. I don't think Creed 3 might be streaming on Prime Video. I know it's available on VOD. I feel like it should have
It's
gone
already
to streaming
out.
already.
It's
Oh,
already
I
out
think it's on
Disney.
MGM Plus.
Oh, that's still a thing. All right.
Yeah. Uh, so my number 5 is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. That one is available on VOD. Number 4 was Air, which is available on Prime Video. Then I had Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and number 3, Past Lives, which if you can find it in limited release, it's worth checking out as my number 2. And then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 at my number 1 spot. Next week, Ethan Hunt is back, and we are going to be going on an impossible mission of Dead Reckoning, and we will be going on an even more impossible mission of ranking the Mission Impossible films. But before we get out of here, I thought it'd be fun to end. We gave you our 5 for, right up until June 30th. There's a whole other half of the year, so I asked Eric we should narrow it down to 1, because let me tell you, there are 3 movies alone in July that I think both of us are very excited to see in the next couple of weeks. But I went a little further out to October, an Apple TV Plus original film directed by Martin Scorsese, based on a book that was a chronicle of a true story, Killers of the Flower Moon. Leonardo DiCaprio, as you can see, is in it. So too is Robert De Niro. That one will come to theaters in October, and then presumably onto Apple TV a little bit later in the year. I was so hyped. It got a premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, and people loved it. It's almost 3 hours, which used to be a thing, but now, not just this year, man. I mean, if Ethan Hunt can give you 2 hours and 45 minutes, you can sit through Martin Scorsese for 3 hours.
I bought the book. He's been doing that forever. Martin Scorsese has been living at 2 hours 40 minutes to 3 hours plus.
Or The Irishman. I think it's still going. I started screening that 3 years ago. It is. I bought the book. I'm looking forward to. Usually, if you know me, my process is I don't want to have read the book before seeing the movie, because a lot of times that ruins. But I got too excited. I bought it. I already started it. I'm going to end up finishing that book, but I'm excited to see that. But I know you have another one, November 3rd, Denis Villeneuve.
Yep. Dune Part 2. That cast just rocks. And the first movie I don't necessarily put on a pedestal, but I do put that director on a pedestal. So, I'm just excited to see a slightly more cohesive story come out of the first one, which I thought was a lot of talented spectacle filmmaking around a really boilerplate kind of simple story. And that's not the fault of the story. Dune has been a prototype for science fiction since it was first written. There's technically, it's not the movie that looks like other movies. Other movies look like it, and then it got to be remade. But I'm just really excited.
Unless you've seen the classic David Lynch version, which,
of course,
which
does its own thing. So I'm just really excited to dig into that world more and have the story go in more interesting directions and use the talent that it has. So yeah,
I'll be curious to see if the characters resonate more, because the first Dune I thought was a technical masterpiece, and I love Denis Villeneuve as a filmmaker. For as much as I love La La Land, his Arrival is the best film the year that it released.
Yeah.
And I thought it was technically brilliant. I thought it was beautiful to behold. But I also too wonder, that was during that weird period where HBO Max, which doesn't exist anymore, now it's just Max. Your turn, Peacock. Is where they were taking all the new releases and just kind of dumping them straight on there. And I sometimes wonder if watching it, but I still thought it was technically beautiful,
brilliant.
Yeah, I just didn't resonate with Paul, which was my problem with even David Lynch's version. I didn't really care about the main character. Yep. And you don't get to see enough of Zendaya's character in the first half. I know they made big advertisements that Zendaya was in Dune, she's in
Not really.
Dune Part 1.
Yeah.
She's in there. I mean, she's there.
Her
but,
picture's there.
I think she appeared in a couple of.
Oh, she's there at the end, of course.
Yeah, at the end.
Yeah, but
actually, ironically, the one that I liked the most from the first Dune was Jason Momoa, who doesn't make
it. They're doing this amazing thing between the Batman and Dune are the only two projects I've heard of that have done this, where they have blurred the line between digital and film cinematography with the lenses that they're using, and a post-production process where they take the digital movie, print it on film, and then digitally record the film print. So it takes some of the grain and the textures and the warbling and that, and gives you a different sense of things. And you can still see it if you put on the Batman, whether it's streaming or whatever, from the very beginning with that Stark logo that pops up, you can see it kind of jiggling. That's sort of texture that comes from playing with that gray area between two mediums that have been at odds for forever. And it's just so creative what they try and do. And like, I don't know. They push things forward, and I'm really hoping that you get more of a story out of it.
I just want to know when we're going to get a darker, grittier Batman.
About time, right? All these
balls in your court, Andy Muschietti.
Yeah, all these fluffy takes on Batman. I'm about tired of it. Yeah.
Well, in case you needed more reason to get excited about Oppenheimer, since you were talking about film, it came out this week.
You're right.
No
I don't buy
CGI shots.
No CGI shots. Probably CGI in shots.
No, don't take this away from me.
Okay. I'd like to believe
there's also apparently a full frontal nudity scene for Cillian Murphy. So I was super excited about one of those pieces of news and very not sure how to take the other. I'll leave it up to you which piece of news hit me which way. But I am excited to see that. I tell you, it's been great. The critic screenings for that and Barbie nationwide are on the exact same day at the exact same time, forcing people to choose. So, but my wife wants to see those, so we're going to both of those together. We're going to Barbie on her birthday, and then Oppenheimer I want to see in IMAX.
Yep, we're working that out. We're working out the double feature weekend.
Things you got to do. But up next, Ethan Hunt. Mission Impossible. Early reviews are pretty great. So as you race to watch the 6 previous Mission Impossible movies, we'll
definitely have watched the first one. By reports, we're going back to Dutch angles and some of the characters from the first one coming back. So just...
I knew it. Emilio Estevez.
Yeah, he comes back and he has like a really messed up face.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Until next time, we'll see you guys at the movies.